Queen Seraphina Voss stood by the tall window of her private chamber, watching the rain fall over the palace gardens. She had been queen for nearly 7 years, and in that time she had learned one truth above all others. A crown does not protect a woman's heart. It only hides the cracks better. That evening, King Maximilian entered her chamber without knocking, as he always did. His face was calm, almost businesslike, the way it looked when he discussed taxes or trade routes. But what he said next was nothing like taxes or trade. "Leora has given me a daughter," he said. "Her name is Aveline. I want you to raise her as your own." Seraphina did not move. For a long moment, the only sound in the room was the rain tapping against the glass. She had known about Leora for years. Every servant knew, every noble at court knew, even the stable boys seemed to know. It was the kind of secret that everyone keeps by pretending it isn't there. But this was different. This was not a secret anymore. This was a command. "You want me," she said slowly, "to raise the child of the woman you love, while the entire kingdom watches and laughs behind their hands. I want you to protect this family," Maximilian said. "If word spreads that I have an illegitimate daughter with no place in this palace, it will weaken the crown. It will weaken our son's future. You will raise her as a royal princess, and no one outside these walls will ever know the difference." Seraphina studied her husband's face. There was no apology in it, no shame, only the cold logic of a king who believed his throne was worth more than his wife's dignity. She could have refused. She could have packed her belongings and returned to her father's house, taking her son with her, leaving the king to explain the mess himself. But queens do not have that kind of freedom. Her son, Prince Edric, was only 4 years old. If she left, she would be leaving him behind too, vulnerable to whatever plans his father and Leora might have for him. So Seraphina did something the king did not expect. She agreed. "I will raise her," she said. "But understand this, Maximilian. Everything you ask of me, I will remember. Every single thing." The king nodded, satisfied, and left the room without another word. He thought he had won. He thought his wife had simply bent to his will, as she always had. He was wrong. The first time Seraphina held baby Aveline, she felt something she had not expected. A strange, quiet tenderness. The child had not asked to be born into this mess. She had not asked for a father who was unfaithful, or a mother who would soon disappear from her life, leaving her to be raised by another woman. Aveline was innocent in all of it. Seraphina decided in that moment that whatever bitterness she carried toward Maximilian and Leora, she would not let it touch the child. If she was going to raise this girl, she would raise her properly, with love, the same way she would raise her own son. Over the following months, Leora visited the nursery less and less. At first it was once a week, then once a month, then almost never. She had what she wanted, a place in the king's heart, and a title that gave her comfort. And the daily work of raising a child held little appeal for her. It was Seraphina who sat beside Aveline's crib during long nights of fever. It was Seraphina who taught her to walk, who caught her when she stumbled, who sang to her in the soft voice she usually reserved only for Edric. The court noticed. Nobles whispered that the queen had finally accepted her fate, that she had become obedient, perhaps even broken by her husband's choices. They believed her quiet grace was a sign of surrender. They were mistaken. Seraphina was not surrendering. She was watching, learning, and waiting. During those years, she paid close attention to everything happening around her. She noticed how Maximilian quietly moved money from the royal treasury to support Leora's lifestyle, money that should have gone toward the kingdom's needs. She noticed the forged documents the king's advisors created to make Aveline's birth appear more respectable than it truly was, documents that, if examined closely, carried details that did not match the truth. She noticed which members of the royal council still respected her, despite the scandal, and which ones had begun to follow the king's lead in treating her with less courtesy. She said nothing, she simply remembered. Seraphina also built quiet friendships during this time, the kind that did not draw attention, but proved far more valuable than loud alliances. She spent time with Ambassador Corwin Hale, a visiting diplomat from a neighboring kingdom, discussing trade agreements and cultural exchanges. Their conversations were polite and proper, nothing more. But Corwin came to respect the queen's intelligence and her quiet strength. He once told her, during a garden walk, that his kingdom would always consider her a friend, whatever troubles she might face at home. Seraphina thanked him and tucked his words away, the same way she tucked away everything else she gathered. She earned the loyalty of the palace staff as well, not through demands, but through kindness. She remembered the names of the kitchen workers' children. She made sure the stable hands had warm coats in winter. She listened when the maids spoke of their troubles, and she helped quietly when she could. Over time, these small kindnesses built something stronger than fear or obligation. They built trust. As the years passed, Aveline grew into a bright, curious child with her father's sharp eyes and a gentle heart that seemed entirely her own. She called Seraphina mother, without hesitation, and she called Leora, on the rare occasions she saw her, simply by her first name. This bothered Leora greatly, though she rarely said so out loud. She had given Maximilian a daughter, believing it would secure her place at court forever, but she had not counted on the daughter loving someone else more. By the time Aveline turned 6, Leora's patience had worn thin. She wanted more than comfort and quiet visits. She wanted recognition. She wanted her daughter to be named heir to the throne, ahead of Prince Edric, the Queen's true-born son. It was a bold demand, and even Maximilian hesitated when she first made it. Naming Aveline as heir would mean publicly admitting the truth of her birth, exposing the forged documents, and risking the anger of a council that valued tradition above almost everything else. But Leora pressed, again and again, reminding the king of promises made in quieter, more private moments. That hesitation, small as it seemed, was the opening Seraphina had been waiting for. She had spent 6 years collecting pieces of truth, like a person gathering stones for a long walk across a river. Now, with Maximilian wavering and the council uneasy, it was time to lay those stones down, one by one, until she had a clear path forward. The unraveling began quietly, the way most important things do. First, Seraphina arranged a private meeting with 3 senior members of the royal council, men who had known her since she first arrived at the palace as a young bride. She showed them the documents related to Aveline's birth, documents that revealed not just the truth of the child's parentage, but the forgery used to disguise it, a forgery that, troublingly, bore details connecting it to misused royal funds. She did not raise her voice. She did not accuse anyone of cruelty. She simply laid out the facts, calmly, the way she had learned to do over years of careful patience. The council members were disturbed, not only by the deception itself, but by what it revealed about how the treasury had been used without their knowledge. Misusing royal funds was a serious matter, one that touched every noble family who depended on the kingdom's resources being managed honestly. Next, Seraphina spoke with Ambassador Corwin Hale. She did not ask him to interfere directly in the kingdom's affairs. That would have been improper and dangerous. But she let him know, in careful words, that the kingdom's stability mattered to her, and that she hoped any agreements between their 2 lands would continue regardless of changes within the royal family. He assured her that his kingdom valued consistency and honest leadership above all else, a quiet signal that outside support would not waver, whatever happened next. Finally, and most importantly, Seraphina spoke with Aveline. She did not tell the child anything cruel or frightening. She simply sat with her one evening, the way she had 1,000 evenings before, and asked her gently about her feelings, about her father, about Leora, about the palace, about what made her happy. Aveline, only 6 years old but wise beyond her years, in the way children often are, spoke openly. She said she loved her father, though she did not see him often. She said Leora felt like a stranger who visited sometimes. And she said, without any hesitation at all, that Seraphina was her mother in every way that mattered. Seraphina held the girl close that night and said nothing more about the matter. She did not need to plan what would come next. She only needed to let the truth, in its own simple way, be ready to speak for itself. The moment came during a formal council meeting, called by Maximilian to discuss Leora's demand to name Aveline as heir. The grand hall was full, nobles and council members seated in their usual places, the king at the head of the table, Leora standing nearby with quiet confidence. Seraphina entered with Aveline beside her, holding the child's small hand. She did not shout, she did not weep. She simply placed the documents on the table, the forged birth records, the treasury records showing misused funds, and asked the council to examine them honestly. The room fell silent as the papers were passed from hand to hand, expressions shifting from confusion to concern to quiet anger. Maximilian's face grew pale. He understood, in that moment, that his wife had not been broken these past 6 years. She had been patient, and patience, it turned out, was far more dangerous than anger. Before anyone could speak further, Seraphina turned to Aveline and asked her, gently, in front of the entire room, a simple question. "Aveline, whom do you consider your mother?" The girl did not hesitate. She looked up at Seraphina and said, clearly, "You are my mother." The words landed with more weight than any document on the table. The council, already troubled by the evidence of forgery and misused funds, now saw plainly where the child's loyalty truly belonged, a loyalty that no title or forged paper could manufacture. Leora left the hall that day with nothing gained and much lost. Her bargain, the one she believed would secure her future, had instead revealed her absence from the very child she hoped to use to climb higher. She departed the court soon after, choosing a quiet life far from the palace she once hoped to rule beside. Maximilian remained king in name, but the council, unwilling to be associated further with deception, placed new limits on his authority. They named Seraphina regent, overseeing the kingdom's affairs alongside the king, until Prince Edric came of age. It was not a dramatic fall from power, not the kind found in old tales of war and conquest, but it was a clear and lasting shift, one built entirely on patience, honesty, and quiet strength. Years later, when people asked Queen Seraphina how she had endured those difficult early years, raising a child that was not her own while carrying the weight of her husband's choices, she would simply smile and say that she had never once stopped being herself. "I did not fight with anger," she would explain. "I fought with patience. I gathered the truth, piece by piece, and I waited for the right moment to let it speak." Aveline grew into a thoughtful young woman, deeply devoted to the mother who had raised her with such steady care. She never forgot the quiet evenings, the gentle questions, the warmth that asked for nothing in return except honesty. And Prince Edric, watching his mother's strength throughout his childhood, learned a lesson no tutor could have taught him, that true power often lies not in loud demands, but in quiet, steady patience. Seraphina never sought revenge in the way the word usually suggests. She did not wish harm upon anyone. She simply refused to remain silent when the truth was ready to be told, and in telling it, she reclaimed everything that had once been taken from her, not through cruelty, but through calm, unshakable strength.